Probably going to be mostly English though. Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to this journal club. So in this case, today we're going to talk about the brain-computer interface. So me, Vicky, and Leo will present. So let's start. So the first for the overview. So by definitions, these are just the systems that facilitate the direct communication between brain and external devices. And then basically we can separate the whole BCI process into three steps. The first one will be the brain signal acquisition. In this case, we just means that try to extract data or signals from our brain. It can be done invasively or non-invasively, which I'm gonna explain a little more detail later. Once we get this data from the brain, we can process the signal into the commands that the computers understand. And then the third step will be the output device control. So once you get all the commands, and then you can basically just command in different devices, for example, the laptops, or robotics arms, even wheelchair, to execute all of them. Um, so wait, I think there's one slide missing. Yeah, yeah. Okay, and then so for the brand signal acquisition. So I think this is the most important part since extracting signals from brains has always been a challenge. So currently there are three main, I would say, methods. One is invasive, and two are invasives, and one is non-invasive. So for the non-invasive one, we have the EEG, we just attach the EEG electrodes directly to our skull to extract the data. And then the second and third are the ECOG and then the intracortical recordings. And so for these, you actually need to do surgeries to put the chips inside of the brains and to extract the signals from it. Um, and then later, I think Leo is going to talk about that in details about how we do it. And then if you look at the historical development of BCIs, so the first human EEG is we actually get that from 1929. And then later on in 1991, almost after 60, 70 years, we have the first sensory motor rhythms-based BCI. We call it MSMR BCI. And then we have the motor imagery-based BCI in 1993. And then after 20 years later, we finally have the first international BCI society. And until last year, we just did the first interventional BCI experiments in non-human primates. So I think it was a hospital in Beijing that actually implant a BCI chip into monkey's brain, and then it enabled monkey to actually control the robotics arms. And then until this year, actually, we have our first Neuralink implant on humans. Um, so yeah, we're gonna talk about that further as well. So if you look at the key applications of the BCIs, so we can basically separate into three main parts. The first one will be the medical rehabilitation. For example, the stroke patients can use it. It can use the motor imagery BCIs for rehabilitation, as we shown here in the example. And the second one could be the assistive technologies. So, for example, the BCI can control the wheelchairs and computer interfaces. And then the third one would be the neuroprosthetics. Basically, you can try to just use BCI signals to control the prosthetic limbs with the brain cells, brain signals only. And then so I would say the main difference between the second and the third is that, so for example, if it's like a robotics arms, for the third example, usually the prosthetic should be attached to the human body, right? But the second example, his is technology. So, I mean, everyone can basically use this kind of technology to control robotics arms remotely, which is pretty cool. And as for the challenges, there are basically three categories as well. The first one will be the technical challenge. Is just to get the high resolution signals and then to being able to process that very efficiently. It was not until like recent years that we actually have AI, this kind of function approximators to actually use BC. I mean, we can actually process the data into the commands, which is pretty cool. And then the second one would be the creating user-friendly intuitive interfaces. Because right now, the signals that we can extract from human brains are actually pretty limited, I would say. For example, you can extract eye movements. You can extract if you want to go forward, leftward, if you can think upwards and downwards. But let's say if you want to think about moving the robotics arm from this position to that position, it's actually kind of hard. So the way people doing right now is that they kind of develop some sort of commands. So that assuming that if you want to move the robotics arm to the left, you're gonna think about moving your eye rolls to the left or moving your left hand or something like that. So the being able to develop such command, the very efficient commands is also very important. And then the second one will be the ethical concerns. So for example, the privacy issues related to the neural data is kind of important. So because once you actually get an implant, right, how can you how you're able to control the data that you get from your brains, and that data privacy is crucial to everyone. And then also another thing is, for example, in the future, once we're able to control or once able to connect our brain with the internet or just connect the online, then cybersecurity becomes crucial, because you definitely don't want people to mess up with their brains. And then, so the third one will be the accessibility, and it can think of it as more of like society risks. Because right now we actually do have BCIs, but it's still not affordable to everyone. So making BCI affordable and accessible to everyone, and especially for those people who need them the most, are very important. Okay, and then so here's just a basic example for the recent advances in BCI technology. So it's about the Neuralink. So actually this year, the company sort of Neuralink uh, by Elon Musk actually able to implant this Neuralink devices to the first human beings. And he was able to use this device to actually play chess and play Civilization 6 for like 8 hours straight, just completely using this BCI device, which is really cool because unfortunately he is paralyzed, so he was not able to use his all the like body's arms to control anything. So yeah, but we have to also have to mention that since human brains is actually we are the Homo brains is actually living in a liquid environment, right? So you can always move, and then when it moves, the brains like the whole brain's actually shifted a little bit. So I think it was not until like recent months that they realized that this kind of connections, that this kind of implant in his brains are actually kind of got loosened because of all the brain movements. And then because of that, the data extracted from his brains are actually become noisier, which makes the whole device harder to control. And then so that becomes a problem that people still need to fix. And lastly, if we look at the future directions that BCI can develop, so presently we already have the cochlear implants. We also have the deep brain simulations for the motor disorders, and we do have the neural rehabilitation already. But if you look at it further in the future, for the probable, plausible, and possible ways, for the probable one, we can very likely to have the assisted neural prosthetics, which right now I think many labs are actually developing. And then if you look at the plausible domains, we can see that perhaps we can have the cognitive enhancement or even the BMI enhanced soldiers, and what maybe you even have the performance monitoring. And then lastly, if you get the possible domain, which right now I think it still seems to be pretty sci-fi, is that, for example, we can have like memory implantation or brain jacking or even emerging brains and AIs together, which is quite insane, but it is still likely. That is still possible, I would say. Yeah. 然后这就是整个的整个的 introduction. And now I think 就是 Vicky 来给我们讲一篇 paper。
Yeah, let me share the screen. So,
Wait, let
um,
me stop sharing the screen.
okay.
Yeah.
So the paper is about conformal in-ear bioelectronics for visual and auditory brain-computer interface. So, it's like a special BCI devices, but the difference is it's non-inherent, and you can put it in your ear. And there are actually a few challenges. So the first one is you have to make sure this device can fit your ear, and everyone has a different inner ear. So that makes this device need to be some flexibility on the material. And the second thing is usually for those materials, we usually need a solid support. So it can be like earplugs or 3D print that attach to this this BCI implants, but most of the time it will lower the communication or lower the signal between the outside world and the device itself. And the third thing is it's really hard to meet the requirement for tight contact and comfort because usually, as I mentioned on the second challenges, so most of them are pretty like hard materials. So when you're trying to remove it or trying to insert it, it's very likely to cause your ear got irritation or inflammation. So what this paper did is they tried a new materials and a new format of BCI. What they did is on the figure A, you can see it's a compressed BCI at first, but when you heat it, it's actually expanded. So, and then when expanded, it can fit your ear. The logic is because on the part D, you can see this is the compressed status, and this is the more flexible condition. And the flexible condition is designed to be bigger than the radius of your ear. So when it's heat up, it actually can touch your ear, so it goes to the shape that you want in your ear. And this is what people can see. There's like a hollow inside, so it won't interfere with your hearing, and you don't need like an extra solid 3D printing to support it. And part C, that's how they design it. Outside is the EGDL, that's where you can receive the signal. And this is how you get the analog signal and then replace it with the digital signal. And then the EAL is like a new material. It can expand and compress based on the electric heat. And and then they verify that it works. So they tried with alpha rhythm as the benchmark for this. They call it spinal E. And usually the alpha rhythm is the one that usually found in the optical and partial lobes. So it is usually related to your vision. And from the graph, you can tell what they have done is actually matched with the MOC signal. So it can tell this one works. And then they did two experiments to further verify it. The first they did is as a VEP experiment. So each subject is have to be focused on a visual flicker for 8 seconds. And they realized, okay, the strong signal exists between the person's like vision and the signal that in the computer. So they match. Very good. And then the second round, they used 9-target SSVEP experiment. And then it had 95% accuracy. 我主要讲它这个 nine target 是说你的屏幕上有9个框，然后呢，它会有个小红点，它会转，然后你就是用眼睛去 trace 小红点它转的地方，然后它再通过你的脑电路去看，你眼睛看到的是否跟你脑电路表示出来的是 matched 的。And then in the 40 target SSVEP experiment, they use 40, and there are like 40 characters. So you're actually tracing the 40 characters and spell them. They have tried 200 trials, and the overall accuracy is 75.58 in 6 seconds. Even though the accuracy lowers a lot, but it can still see it's actually work. And then the second part of the test is called cocktail party experiment. So in this experiment, the patients are able to receive two signals. One is called ignored, one is called attend. The attend is the signal you want to listen. The ignore is something that can blur your like tendon signal. So they want to test if the patients have this material can still distinguish the different sound. And then the accuracy is pretty high from this graph. And so you can kind of tell that even though you have those implants, it won't influence your hearing a lot. So then we go to the result. This actually shows this can work with 95%, and the natural speech auditory clarification accuracy can be reached 84% in the cocktail party experiment. And also there is one challenge and something I have to mention for this paper，就是在他们做这个40个测试的时候，只有一个人是完整的拼了词出来，但是其他的人多多少少就是会有一些误差，所以他们的猜测是因为就是 vision 和脑的控制还有听觉不同的人在这上面会有一些准确度的差异。所以他们 next step 是去测试更多的人，然后有一个更大的数据量来看它的准确性。And that's it. So we can move for the industry.
Okay, let me share my screen. So we are moving to the industry part, and the first is the market size. So the left figure shows the global market size, and the right figure shows the uh, market size in the United States, and obviously it is a growing market. And for the market share by the region, we can see that the most majority is still in the North America, but the Asia Pacific is also a fast developing market. And for the market share by the end user, the medical user is the majority. 但是就像前面说的那样，就是 military 的也有一定的占比，就是挺有意思。And then it's the market share by the product. And as you can see from the figure on the left, the majority is still the non-invasive BCI, which is like the EEG and MEG, or all that kind of things. And uh, invasive and partially invasive is still in a small number. And for the market share by the downstream application, mostly is still focusing on the healthcare. But there is also like entertainment, communication, and also smart home control. And for the landscape, as you can see, there are a lot of different companies with different applications, and this is only a small part of them. And different companies have the products of different company have different ways of signal acquisition, and different ways have different invasiveness. Uh, so here are some representative companies. The most invasive way of signaling acquisition is the intracortical microelectrodes, which is directly inserting the electrodes inside the gray matters. And for example, Neuralink is one of them, and also BlackRock Neurotech. And the last invasive one is the subdural electrocorticography, which is like you still need to open your skull, but the electrode are just like a patch that puts on the surface of your cortex. And the third one is the endovascular electrocorticography. And this way is even less invasive because you don't need to open your skull. You just need to like，它就像是一个这个像是就是像搭支架一样，你只需要顺着血管就可以把这个 electrode，它是把这个 electrode 搭在你的这个大脑的血管当中的，然后他们管这个叫什么？这个技术吧，叫做 stemfrode，就是 stem 就是这个支架的意思，它就相当于是在血管当中搭了一个支架，然后来进行这个 signal 的 recording。And the least invasive way of signal acquisition is the EEG and also MEG and the functional infrared spectroscopy。然后他们分别的这个各自的这种representative company 就在这张图上面。然后 Neuralink 应该是这个最有名的。然后 BlackRock Neurotech 的话，它和 Neuralink 有一点点区别，就是 Neuralink 的 electrode 它是软，它是 flexible 的，然后 BlackRock Neurotech 的话，是硬的，它是直接扎进去的。然后 Precision Neuroscience 的话，就是这种 subdural 的 electrocorticography，就是它直接就是放在这个表面。然后 Synchron 的话，应该是唯一一个做这个 endovascular electrocorticography 的。然后 Emotive 的话，它是做 EEG 的，然后是 wireless EEG，像一个 headset 一样。然后 Kernel 的话是做这个 infrared spectroscopy。Then I will introduce Neuralink in detail. So Neuralink is founded in 2016 and it's in San Francisco. And it has entered the founding round of Series D，它在这些 setup 当中算是走的比较远的，就是很多的话还在 Series A，然后 it has a total funding of 680 million, and the last funding round is in 2023, and it has 197 employees, and its valuation is 5 billion on 2023, and it has its competitors are BlackRock Neurotech and Paradromics， 他们两个都是做这种intracortical 的，然后他们俩用的都是这个比较硬的那种 electrode， 但是 Neuralink 的话，它用的是这个更加 flexible 的，我们等会儿会讲。然后目前 Neuralink's goal is to provide a high performance interface that will enhance the control of digital devices for people with quadriplegia， 它就是 paralysis on their limbs. And also it targets patients or people who have spinal cord injury and also ALS. And its recent progress is that they have a first human patient study approved by FDA in May 2023. And this study is called PRIME, which is precise robotically implanted brain-computer interface. And its aim is to evaluate the safety of their implant and surgical robots and assess the initial functionality of their BCI for enabling people with quadriplegia to control external device with their thoughts. So when people want to translate their product from the animal to human, there are a lot of challenge. For example, they have a greater data input. Also, they need higher resolution and also biocompatibility and the higher stability of their material. And also, they need to have a more precise implant. And also, the data they collect need to be processed online and in the real-time analysis and feedback. So to this end, Neuralink develops several products. The first one is their implant, which is this thing here, and it includes enclosure, battery chips, and the thread. The thread is shown here, and it's a thin, flexible, multiple electrode polymer probes. And because its probes is thin and flexible, so it has a really low stiffness. Therefore, if they want to insert them into the brain, they need to have some stiffener. So that's why they also develop a robot, which is kind of like a sewing machine, as shown in this figure. And you can see it's basically the process how this robot works, how they sew this electrode into the cortex. And these robots can also avoid the vascular culture and enable the electrodes to record from dispersed brain regions. And these figures shows the result from a mouse after the implant of the electrode. And this here black things are the electrodes, and this is the mice with the implant. And also they have their software which enable the online processing by and basically how they analyze the data collected from the patients is by a machine learning process. 简单来说的话，就是他们会有一个这个 app， 他们是 develop 了一个 app， 叫做 Brain Computer Interface Experience。通过这个 app 的话，它可以收集这个 patient 的这个数据吧，就是比如说它那个 app 上面会让 patient 就是想象一下你在点这个点，或者想象一下你把这个鼠标从左移到右啊，或者怎么样，然后它就会记录这个patient 在想这个动作的时候，他的这个大脑的这个信号是什么样子的。 然后通过这个 machine learning 的 process，它就大概就得逐渐的你知道这个 patient 它产生这样一种信号的时候，它大概这个鼠标就是在往哪个方向移，或者鼠标是不是就点下去了这样的过程。好，然后就是一些这个 further reading，比如说第一个就是 A General Intro to the Products of Neuralink, which is written by Elon Musk, and also here are some detailed uh, explanation and papers about the products like the polymer thread robot and also the how the data is processed. So yeah, that's all.
That's all the presenting. If there are any questions, just bring it up. 跟我英文都行。
I guess I'll go first. My question is, in my very rudimentary understanding of how neurons work, they fire, right? And then they produce an electron potential. That's what we learned in intro bio, Stephen. And so my question is, how do we go from that sort of action potential to a recognizable command that some sort of interface will execute? Like, how do you bridge that gap? Like, how do we know that a part of your brain firing equals a certain action? Or is there some sort of learning process beforehand that we have to train the machine to go to for it to understand what the brain is thinking?
Oh,
Yeah.
Right.
okay. You go first.
No, you could go first.
Okay, so usually it's because when you do some action potential, you also form a little bit tiny voltage changing. So most of the device, like the one that I mentioned, they're trying to detect the voltage changing when you have a neural action. And because like when you fire the neuron, there are lots of like different ions that can come in and come out. So you can actually calculate how many ions are flowing. And so you can use the voltage changing and then calculate how many ions are flowing out and in and change actually potentially how many neurons in number actually fired.
Yeah, and also with my limited understanding of BCI, I think the way they measure it is not just like measure one particular like one single neuron, but measure the whole regions. Like about to measure like the actual potential of like the whole regions. And like by doing experiments, we can actually know that what part of the regions is in charge of kind of what functions. For example, there's like a speech region, there's like a motor region, where the speech region will be in charge of like all the speech process, when the motor regions like basically control all different parts of the muscles. So by doing all these experiments, you can know that which region will be in charge of what particular actions. And then so like for example, let's say if you want to do BCI for the like muscular the muscular cells, the muscular neurons, then what you do is you're gonna actually implant the BCI device into that particular region, so that when you have some sort of actions, when you have some sort of thoughts about, for example, moving your muscle, moving your left hands or right hands, and in this case, the BCI in that particular region will detect the higher potential than the other regions. I think that's kind of how it works. And then other cases, for example, let's say you want to do like speech recognition, or want to do like not speech recognition, but like if you want to detect the brain waves for speech, then in this case, you can implant that particular device into the specific region for speech.
Yeah. Just to add on what Steven mentioned, so that's why we really hate noise. Even though a little bit, we really hate it because that really sometimes the noise can actually smash all the signals you want and give the false signal out.
Okay, so I guess my follow-up question to that would be like, so perhaps for like speed.
You muted. You
Yeah,
good?
Sean, you
Oh,
good?
sorry, my bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just saying, like, my follow-up question would be, if we can like implant a chip into your speech recognition area in the brain, then does that mean like within that area, like the way your neurons fire has some sort of clue to it, or like progression to it that happens every time you're trying to say the same word? Like if I say hello, like my neurons are going to fire in a certain sequence, and the whatever chip picks up on it, like so, right? So if I say hello twice, does the chip, how does the chip know that I said the same word twice? Is it because my neurons fired in the same pattern?
Yeah, right. So here, yeah, so that's the thing. So right now, I like from my understanding, I don't think there's
Oh,
any BCI device that can actually detect which word you're saying. That's the problem. Like,
oh,
yeah, so
oh,
like
cool, cool, cool.
we're not that, yeah, we're not that far yet. I
Gotcha,
think,
gotcha.
yeah, because like BCI, like the BCI or the signals that we process, like that we extracted from the rings, actually very noisy. It's
Okay,
like very random.
right.
And then I think mostly like right now people are using like the non-invasive EEG device, which is like even more random, like which is even more noisier because technically you're like try to extract the whole signal just directly through your brain skull, and that can add up to a lot of noise, and also the hairs and other stuff. And so actually to reduce the noise, sometimes I think people actually need to put the gels, yeah, actually some like
Ah,
gels to the EEG electrodes to reduce this kind of noise, but still, like I don't think you can do that. And another thing is like for even just for the speech region, I think even right now, like I think scientists can kind of like pointed out which region is kind of in part like in charge for the speech, but still like you have your left brain and right brains, right? And then I think right now
yeah.
we knows like one brain is in charge of like more the creative stuff, another one is like more like arithmetics or logics and stuff. I think
Has that
that's like
been debunked or is this still a thing?
sorry, what?
Has it been debunked? Like, is it like a fake thing or is it a real thing? I swear I've seen it somewhere where it's like the creative left brain and logical right brain. It's like not real science. Something like that. I could be
Right,
entirely
yeah.
wrong.
I
I
mean,
don't
yeah,
know.
that's like I think the whole field is like always like changing, always evolving, so I'm not sure.
Uh, okay, cool, cool.
Yeah, I'm not particularly sure. But like for example, even for speech recognition, right? I mean not for speech recognition, even for just like when let's say when you say some words, you're just not just gonna use like one part of your brain, but like multiple part. You have to
Yeah,
first of all like organize the whole speech, right? You have to organize what
yeah.
you're saying. Yeah, you have to think first and then you say it afterwards.
Sure.
So yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah. Any other questions?
那我再问 Leo 一个问题。
啊，
Neuralink 究竟比别的公司，除了它比别的公司体量大，它真正领先，它在这个技术上领先在哪儿？
说实话，我感觉就是没啥领先的，
这样的吗？对，
就是可能不同技术它到时候适用的场合可能不一样，或者是就具体哪个脑区它更加的 accessible 吧，我觉得它可能会用到不同的这种 signal acquisition 的方法。
我
Neuralink 的话，对，就是单纯的从 signal acquisition 的角度来看，我觉得其实都差不多吧。
嗯，
我补充一点，就是我觉得 Neurobiology，我记得还有一个它相对的领先的是在于它的 FDA 认证，它就是 FDA 给它的病
哦，
人做那个临床实验了，就是这个好像
那确实，
对我目前还没有知道其他哪一家脑机接口的公司就在美国的好像有，但是 Neuralink 是第一家应该，Yeah。
Yeah.
That's like a huge advantage，因为你要只
呀，
有开始做了，你才能once you get into clinical, then you can start like experiment and stuff。但是就是，yeah，basically that's it。Any other questions? And if not, I think we can call it for a day.
呀，谢谢你们，
Okay, sounds good then. Yeah. Then
拜拜，谢谢大家。
yeah, thank you so much, guys.